Lily, welcome. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you here. Now, Lily is a regular comic on the comic scene, and you've been doing comedy for, is it 2 or 3 years now?
Yeah, about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. And Lily has done the Knock Knock School. That's how you kind of got started.
Yes.
How many times have you done the school?
I think 4 or 5.
4 or 5.
I'm coming for your record.
Yeah. I've done the school either 6 or 7, so I've kind of up there as well. Big shout out to Maury Morgan at the Hard Knock Knocks School of Comedy. I'm not sure if I've said that wrong.
You said it in the best legal term you could say.
Yeah. We don't want to get anyone sued. Now, Lily, how did you get started in comedy? Talk about how you got started.
Yeah, not the regular way, I guess, that most people do, doing open mics. I'd never thought about doing comedy. I get really bad stage fright. But I'd moved across the road from the McKinnon Hotel, and they do monthly comedy there. And so my partner and I were like, oh, should we go check it out? And we went across and we checked it out, and the lineup was Chris Wainhouse, Matt O'Neill. It's run by a dude called David Rose. And so we met all those people, and they said, hey, if you like comedy, come and check out like the Comics Lounge. It's where you go. So off we went to the Comics Lounge, and on the break, this guy came up to me and he's like, hey, do you want to buy a ticket for, a gold membership? And that was Doug Chappell. And we got chatting, and he said, well, I'm doing this other show at the Rubber Chicken with my mate Brad Oakes. You should come down. And so we went along to that and met Brad, met Maury and everyone at the Rubber Chicken, and that's the law. Then I started working at the Rubber Chicken and doing Hard Knock Knocks. So it was a really quick sort of from right across the road from my house to North Melbourne and South Melbourne and the city, and it just opened up my world.
Well, if you contrast Lily's story to my story, I spent a year at youth theatre, 6 years at drama school, and then went and did a gig. I mean, I was so hoping that I could do something in the acting comedy world. And you've just actually kind of almost like gone out one night and accidentally end up becoming a stand-up comic. So be careful where you go out for drinks. So what's comedy been like for you, Lily? In the 3 years you've been doing it, 2 or 3 years, what's it been like? I mean, how many gigs would you say you're up to?
I don't think I've passed 100 yet.
Oh, really?
I've definitely, the first few years was once a month. I'd do comedy once a month, get out, give it a go, and then sort of have that crash for quite a while. I also have kids. I think that can affect it if you're a woman and a primary caregiver. So, damn you kids, you've ruined my career. But, they're not going to watch this anyway. So I don't think I've cracked even 100 yet. In this year, I've probably done the bulk of those gigs. I've really tried to get out every week in the lead up to the Raw semi-final that I was in. Just tried to get my stage time up like a speed run.
Yeah. So what was the first gig like? I mean, how bad was it? I mean, the nerves, was the first gig with the Hard Knock Knocks?
Yeah.
So that was so this is the thing, we always like to mention this, that when you do the comedy school, you're getting up with 9 or 10 other people who have also never done comedy before, except for the alumni that have returning and the pro headline act. So it's kind of safety in numbers, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's really just, nobody knows what they're doing. How was your first gig? I mean, how did you feel before your first gig? Talk us, I want to know, I get an insight into it.
Yeah, sure. I was terrified. Even in class, in the demonstrations we had to do, Maury or Brad would gesture to me and get me to get up and do my homework, and I'd just sit there and stare them dead. Just no, I'm not getting up, I'm not saying anything. I was terrified, and I did it. It wasn't great. I was on notes, and I was on notes for a very long time, but it's something that I did, and I never thought I would. And coming off the stage after that, there was this huge, rush of like, okay. I remember they said to me, what's the worst thing that's going to happen tonight? Are you going to die? I was like, no, I guess not. Is your career going to be ruined? I don't have a career, so as of yet. It was just like, why not? And then once that fear was removed, it was so much easier to keep going,
It's interesting, the whole idea that nothing bad's going to happen from jumping up and even not getting any laughs. But even I did a lot of comedy. People know to watch the show. I did a lot of comedy in the 90s, and even now I still feel a bit like crap, it didn't work. You know, like I still kind of take it a little bit personally that maybe I shouldn't. So okay, so that was your first gig, right?
Yeah.
Now, how did you then go to do the second gig? Did you do the school again, or did you just jumped up?
I made sure some advice that I was given was don't leave it a long time after this graduation glow.
Yeah.
Because it is, you know, it's the hottest crowd you'll have, or maybe not ever in your career, but maybe. It's such a great crowd. Everyone's so excited. So you have a great gig. There's a lot of love in the room. And the advice I was given was don't let that high fizzle out, because as creatives it does, and you get, maybe not everyone, but you know, I'll get a bit depressed after a good career success. So it was like, get out in the next 48 hours, do another gig, ride that high, and then, you know, build from there. And so it became easy. I guess it's sort of like exposure therapy.
And what's it like now after doing it for, as you say, we're doing it, you'll call it 2.5 years to whatever. What's it like jumping? Is there still that nerves? Is there still that kind of like, crap, you know, like, you know, trying to remember the routine, you know, like...
Just recently, no. I think I've just cracked. And everyone, that's the thing, everyone takes their time. You can't compare your, you know, trajectory to someone else's.
Yeah.
So for me, it's taken this long to be able to go, I've got at least 2 solid 5-minute sets. I have not tried putting them together for a 10 yet, but I've got 2 separate sets that I know I can do without notes. You know, if I lose my place, I can riff a bit and fix it up and I'll make it, you know. So I know that I can get out there, even if I'm feeling like shit or, you know, not feeling it, I can go and do a gig, which feels cool.
And what's the worst gig that Lily, you know, that you would have, Lily? Like is the worst gig like half a chuckle here, silence there, or is it worse? Because you know that I was talking to Cameron Murator about the whole idea. You know, Dustin Martin, the footy player.
Yeah.
And the whole idea that his worst game isn't going to be as bad as someone else's worst game. I mean, are you getting to that point where a death isn't too bad a death?
Yeah,
you get into that?
Definitely when I look back and compare. I mean, I don't think I've ever died on, I think people use that, I don't think I've ever died on stage, but I've definitely bombed a bunch. And that's also, I think, great exposure. I think it's a very privileged few who get to go up and not have a bad gig. And I think I say to other newer comedians, you know, they say, oh, Lil, I had a really bad gig. It's like, great, awesome, because now that's over. You know what a bad gig feels like. What was the worst part for you? What was the least bad part? That's it. So for me, I think it's a very small, I'm still not good with very small audiences for an open micer. I should be. I struggle with when there's just a couple of people I can't see on stage. It's making it more intimate. So I've tried to push myself to do smaller gigs. I'm doing street comedy on the weekend outside the Capitol Theatre, just with a box and a microphone. And
wow.
And that's, I've been advised by a few people, maybe don't do that. But for me, I see it as a really cool, that's probably my worst case scenario gig. So I feel like if I can at least have fun doing that, I'll have crossed another barrier. There won't be much I'm scared of.
You know, I had Lars Kallio on the show, and he said, he gave me this interesting advice, which you remember. He said, why don't you go hire a laundromat? You know, hire out a laundromat and just, you know, because it won't cost you any money.
Yep.
You know, bring a PA in and just invite everyone, you know, and just say, look, I'm just going to try all this stuff.
Yep.
You know, I'm probably going to die. Probably nothing funny's going to be said. But I'm just going to hire a laundromat where there's, you know... But that could be something we should do, Lily. You know, we should, as people who are trying to build up their routines, we should get maybe a third comic as well and just hire a laundromat. I know there's one in Elwood.
Oh, he's already got it.
Yeah. And just on a Friday night, just kind of like, you know, try and all this new stuff and try and riff or whatever the word is.
Yeah.
So what about how much of a prolific writer are you, Lily? You know, like, I mean, how quick or easy do gags come to you, or things that you think are funny? So
writing's really interesting for me because I love to write. I write a lot of poetry. I write, you know, stories, fictions, things like that. Writing comedy has got to be the hardest thing to write. It's just, it's so personal and it's also so nuanced. So for me, I write the best when I'm really tired. When I'm really stoned, is sort of when my ideas... Actually, no. when I write the best. That's when the best ideas will come to me. And I tend to reverse engineer jokes. So as a stoner, I'll think of a funny punchline. It'll just be like, oh, imagine if this happened, you know, like, oh, imagine how funny this would be. And then I go, okay, so how do I get, that's the punchline. How do I get to that in a clever way, in a funny way, in an interesting way? And I'm still exploring that with all my jokes at the moment. I'm going back to them and sort of trying to look at the punchline, go, I like that. How can I get there in a good way?
And what about what would you say to people about having a drink before the show or having a smoke? I mean, do you tend to all leave that till after the show, or do you?
Look,
have you been a bit sozzled on stage?
Yeah, best practice. I think I know a lot of people who do not have a drink, obviously, before a show.
Yeah.
I found that with a lot of trial and error, my sweet spot is 1 or 2 beers just to get rid of that anxiety, the social aspect for me, loosen up a bit. Any more than that has not proven to be the best.
It's like the old actors who used to have a swig of whiskey or something before they jump on stage just to kind of settle the nerves. And so what, and this is a question I really want to kind of dig into this right now. Obviously, comedy is kind of a very male-dominated field. In fact, Lily's the first female we've had on the show.
Oh.
And
the audience is going. You can't hear it right now, but the audience is like wee, going off. They're all clicking like that.
So how hard is it to be in this male-dominated area? And also, there's another thing as well that, and I don't think, Lily, I've ever seen your act. I don't think I've ever seen your act, but some women tend to stay in that lane where they talk a lot about sex, they talk a lot about being a woman, they talk a lot about how have you found, before we get into what you talk about or what your jokes are based on, how have you found being a woman in this kind of male dominated? I mean, you got 3 guys go, blokey blokes, get up there, do their routine, and Lily comes up and...
Yeah, look, it's interesting, like as you said, you're listening to like 5 open micers talk about their dick vein, and you're just like, oh, I can't relate to that. Look, it's difficult because it's a numbers game for me in a way, in the way that by virtue of being a woman, there's going to be a lot of people who are taken out of the pool by caregiving for children, domestic duties, things like that. I do feel that the scene is quite safe. I don't feel, I know there's obviously always improvements to be made, but in terms of just the numbers, the sheer ratio, there's just a lot more guys. And so when lineups are being made, unless you're doing a particularly diverse lineup or a girls' night, you do tend to be outweighed. I personally, I don't know if this is like kosher to say, I've been very lucky in being offered gigs, and sometimes that is by virtue of, oh, hey, we need a chick on the lineup, you're reliable, do you reckon you can get up? I think that should always be an opportunity that's shared amongst all the girls. I certainly try to. But yeah, look, it's definitely tougher, but it's not impossible. And I mean, ladies, anyone watching, like the one female subscriber aside from myself maybe, it's not, it's not a boys' world anymore. You can take what you want, I see like Katie Wainhouse, Bron Lewis, there's so many chicks that are just doing so well. Kitty Flanagan, who, shout out to Fierce. I don't know. It's not. I don't think it's too bad.
But can you talk about the same things that men talk about, or is it's kind of like a different set? I mean, what I mean,
that's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, because it's like if I did a footy club, I feel like my routine wouldn't match that. There's a whole bunch of gigs that I wouldn't feel that Arwin Kraze fits into. You know what I mean?
Got you.
What do you find with your material, or what crowds do you go? They're a bit. They're. I mean, the interesting thing is that if you go to a comedy night, there probably is a 50-50 split of men and women anyway. So women probably just love seeing you get up. Is that how?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely find in the open mics that I do, there are plenty of couples on dates at the moment. It's definitely not just a bunch of blokes in a room. That's only if there's only comedians there. Then it will just be a bunch of dudes. But otherwise, the audience is diverse. I find that women over 40, over 45, and their partners are a great demo for me. I talk about, parenting. My children are teenagers now, so they enjoy it. But I also really enjoy seeing the 19-year-old guys who have a chuckle over like a breastfeeding gag or something, because it's just, I think, so shocking to them that it's funny. It just slaps them in the face. So yeah, I don't think there is. I wouldn't say I have a set demo, and I think that is also a benefit to being a female comedian. Is depending on what you talk about. I don't talk a lot about sex and stuff like that. I'm not hot enough. But shut up, the audience is laughing. But I think that there's so much you can talk about. I don't feel pigeonholed, unless it's parenting, and then I'm a bit pigeonholed. But ain't we all parents?
So you have a broad brushstroke really with your return. That's fantastic.
Totally.
Fantastic. Now, Lee, I always ask this question when I have comedians on. What's the dream with comedy? Is it about, I'm just enjoying myself, just having fun, or is there kind of like this goal that, wouldn't mind actually buying a brand new car from comedy, wouldn't mind buying a house from comedy, wouldn't mind actually getting some TV or radio exposure? What is the goal or the dream for you? Where do you see?
I think that's a great question again. I think for me, I miss sketch comedy. I miss family variety shows. It's something I grew up with Hey Hey It's Saturday, things like that. And without sounding like a politician, it's a keystone, I think, of Australian family values that we may have lost. There's not, come around kids and let's gather around the TV and watch maths and watch, whatever her name is, get her box out. It's not the same. So for me, I would love to see and maybe be a part of a new generation of sketch comedy, of a family variety show, something like that. That's sort of, I guess, would be my end goal, to write comedy and to contribute in that way.
And as I look at you there, you remember, do you ever watch Comedy Company? Do you ever see Epi, Comedy Company?
Yeah.
You could play, because you've got that youthful appearance. You could play schoolgirl. You could play, in fact, it's hard to imagine you got two teenage kids because you look so youthful and everything. I actually, for those who don't know, I haven't mentioned this on the show, but I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I became a father when I was 50.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I know.
I became a mother at 20. I just turned 21.
Right.
So that's a huge difference. And I mean, we all end up in the same place, don't we?
Yeah.
It's wild and I guess there's no better, some people say, I don't know how you could have done it so young. Others must say to you, I don't know how you could have done it at that age. You just do, don't you?
I wouldn't swap it, and I wouldn't have a different world in any way. I mean, I love my daughter. She's amazing. So you want to bring back sketch comedy. And that would, I heard this interesting thing. I think a television producer said this years ago that they look what the television networks look for sometimes is ensembles. Mm-hmm. Like the DGen, they were kind of there was like 4 or 5, 6, 7 of them, whatever. And then with Comedy Company, similar with Fast Forward, there's ensembles. Are there people that you can hook up and join up with, and kind of make this, somehow make it?
Yeah. Oh, look, the people who I feel lucky enough, I guess, to call my peers, I think we're seeing really at this stage the emergence of the next generation of comedy stars, everyone that you'll see at the comedy festival, on TV, on Taskmaster. I think we're all bubbling away now, and I see so much, because I produce as well, and that's a passion of mine in comedy as well, and there's just the sheer volume of talent at the moment, which you would have seen as well out there, is almost overwhelming. So it's almost an inevitability that there will be something like this. You've got Auntie Donna and what is it? Haven't You Done Well Productions or something like that. They're doing a lot of good stuff in the internet space and stuff like that. So I'd just love to see if we even have free to air television in the future, I'd love to see something big and just bringing all that fresh talent, giving people a chance on telly, stuff like that. It'd be cool.
Now you did mention to me, and I just want to ask this, and it could be a no-go zone. You date someone, I'm not going to say who, but a comedian.
Yes.
What's it like, comedian dating comedian? I mean, is it work? Like, hey, here's a gag, he's not a gag, he's a gag, he's not a gag. I mean, does it? Because I might as well share a bit about myself. I've had a lot of the mental issues back in the 90s. And a psych nurse said to me, "Don't, whatever you do, don't ever marry someone with psych issues, because one year you're in hospital, the next year they're in hospital. You know what I mean? Take turns. But what's it like, comedian to comedian thing? What's that like?" There we go.
Sorry.
You just answered the question. Here we go. Okay.
There's a show called Never Date a Comedian.
Right. Here we go.
Look, no, it's really insightful. We don't talk about comedy a lot, actually. Very rarely get tips from B. The mysterious bee. No, it's definitely great in terms of when you get off a gig and you've had a great gig or a really bad gig, to have someone in the industry who knows what you're talking about and be like, "Oh, I'm feeling like this, I feel a bit crushed, I missed a beat there," and as opposed to a regular partner who might be like, "Come on, babe, it's just jokes, like who cares?"
Well, no. I think a regular partner's going to say, "What are you even doing this for?"
Yeah. We'll start with that.
We could be watching the footy.
Sure, get a real job, would be the first thing I'd say. But when you both don't have real jobs, it's, oh my gosh, I need to burp.
Yeah. That's not getting edited. That's not getting.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. I should have done
you can burp and do what you like on the show.
Great, perfect. No, it's really fun and interesting. I've been exposed to a lot of really cool pro gigs through that, which I've been really lucky to do. See a lot of really great comedians perform from a very early stage in my career, and I learn by watching and then analysing and applying. So it's been, it's very cool. Never date a comedian, but it's been great. So
interestingly, my wife, who is one of the most non-comic type. She would never get on stage. I don't think she even likes even being in an ad or something. That has no kind of, would do well, I think, but no interest in that. I think she looks at me and she said to me, my wife has said to me, she's gone, "Well, maybe Ian, Arwin, maybe you don't do comedy, maybe you don't, it's you know what I mean?" And so I suppose the positive thing about going out with a comic at any level would be that level of support, and also going to gigs together and.
Yeah.
They're jumping up or you're jumping up or whatever. So I want to ask you about running rooms, because you've run a room, or you've run maybe several.
Yep.
Now that's got to be a frustration, especially the marketing side. Talk us through that whole scenario of running rooms, and because I think that for people who have an interest in comedy, there are different types of comedians. There are comedians who just do gigs. Then there are comedians who do gigs and they're kind of movers and shakers. And then there's comedians who probably, like tennis or anything else, go make a pack out of money doing radio, TV, film.
Yeah.
But there is this middle ground of comics that are movers and shakers. They kind of not only contribute to the comedy scene in terms of their act, but they also make sure that others get a chance and jump up, and they run rooms. Talk us through, how did you come to run a room,
Did I come to run a room? I think it started when I was working as a bartender and the manager at the Rubber Chicken. And the Rubber Chicken, for those of you who haven't been paying attention, was a fantastic live comedy venue and pub in South Melbourne.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
It was legendary, had everyone there. It was great times. So I ended up getting asked by the owner, Maury, if I would like to start learning how to book the shows and if I was interested in that aspect, and I was very much. So I started booking all of the Punchlines shows at Rubber Chicken.
Wow.
And that was just great. It was like, here's a list of all these comedians that you admire so much. Here's your budget, make a show. I was very lucky in that way that the venue was selling the tickets. I didn't have to worry about that. I just got to put all my little comedians in a row and make a cute little poster and go, here's a nice show. And it was a very gentle introduction to room running. Post the Rubber Chicken, I was like, I still want to do this. This is great. Different thing when you don't have control of the venue. Still awesome. I had an open mic room in Collingwood at the Bendigo Hotel.
Okay.
Did you ever come to that?
No, I didn't. I was booked at the one in was it Cheltenham? The other one?
Bentley. Bentley. Yeah.
I was booked to the one on Bentley, but the show got cancelled for some. That was at a time when the ex.
Oh yes,
Remember
bad
that?
things.
Yeah, bad things happening, and I actually got I was booked that to do that show. Yeah, so I was very grateful. I was grateful for that opportunity to get booked, and hopefully, if you're running more rooms, you can jump on something else.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I had that room, and then I had in Bentley at the Sonder Bar on Centre Road in Bentley. Fantastic venue, and that still runs now. That's run by someone else. I handed that over. Still runs every Thursday. Awesome room.
So why would you hand it over? That's the thing. Talk us through that.
At that time, the father of my children had passed away. He committed suicide, and I was just so overwhelmed. I stepped back from comedy completely, but I had built this great room where people were coming in. It filled a spot locally. There's a lot of comedians that live around that area. So I didn't want it to die, so I handed it over, and now it's flourishing in a way that I'm sort of like, hey boys, like, come on, you can give it back now. It's all thanks for looking after it. But no, that's totally fine. It's a matter of, I think, just finding a venue where there's a market, approaching them. Sometimes the venue will have requests, and just working it out. So I'm on the prowl again, I think, although it is a lot easier to be a comedian and just get booked to do comedy than it is to sell tickets, market it, like book people.
So what's it like booking comedians or working with comics when you're running a room? I mean, do you get people who? I mean, obviously in my years of doing comedy, I've seen quite a few things like people getting upset because they thought that they'd have more time on stage or whatever, or then people not showing up, or people showing up and not wanting to perform because the audience isn't the right size for them, or obviously you see all the stuff, and people, even dealing with rooms. I there was a room down the road here and they wanted me to give them a show reel, and it's like, well, I mean, they're not paying me. I mean, it's just it's a free.
Don't you know who I am? Have you seen this show? Come on.
Well, I mean, maybe that's the problem, that they have seen the show, but what did you find working with comedians? I mean, are they kind of a difficult bunch, or is it kind of almost like a cross section of society where you got your good ones, your bad ones, sure. Is it like same as anything else?
Oh, look, I prior to going into the comedy entertainment sector, I had worked in the convention space, so like the nerd conventions, like Oz Comic Con, stuff like that. And the guests there, you work with LA celebrities and actors. Melbourne comedians are worse, for sure. Comedians are, look, they're super chill, but they're also divas. That's so contradictory, but it's like you said, some people are totally fine. A lot of people are really grateful to get a spot in a room, whether I've done paid rooms and, free rooms, done rooms where it's like, look, if we get over X tickets, I'll chuck you a couple of bucks, or you can drink for free. Don't do that. That one ruins me every time. But yeah, look, it just depends. I've had some people who it's just like, man, like, you can't even get on at the lounge. Why are why are you giving me this attitude? And then people who I've seen go from their very first gig to, darlings of the industry now and it's so, and they've stayed the exact same. Like, thank you for my first gig. If you ever need anything, totally cool. So
this leads me on the next question. What is the best balance for a room? So is it like you have a set of tryouts and a great headline, or you just have it all tryouts and a professional MC? What's the best? What's the best way it works out? You think for that level of tryout?
I definitely think having a solid MC is the key, especially on a tryout on open mic sign up level, which is what you're talking about. It can get so chaotic, it can get all over the place. And the main thing is it can become a really unenjoyable show for the audience. And ultimately, that's what we're doing. We're putting on shows for an audience. As much as we're giving stage time to comedians and stuff, if no one's watching, what's the point? So for me, it's about making sure that the MC has control over everything and also is warming up the crowd to the right, extent where they're ready to welcome on the first act. I love having not untested, but lower level open micer comedians, because there's so many good ones. And then have a great support and a cool headliner. You've got a great show and you've got a mix.
What's the budget for that though? I mean, in terms of because you've got to do some marketing, surely, or so. Does the venue give you a budget, or are you or do you go there begging and go, look, you've got this free night, we'll happy to work in that space?
Look, I mean, generally it depends on the venue, but a lot of venues will either ask for a fee for the room if they're always busy. Yeah, you can end up paying for that, or they'll be happy with like, look, if you can sort of guarantee that you'll bring over X amount of people, we're happy with over the bar. Sometimes you can make a deal where they can take a percentage of any tickets sold over the bar, things like that. They might have a guarantee. I usually just try to find a night locally where they may have a slower night. Comedy can work on pretty much any night. And suburban places, midweek comedy is quite huge because people don't want to be going to the city, to North Melbourne or whatever to see comedy. So they want to see it in their local area. All good. I think a sweet spot is probably about, like $1,000. I like putting on like $1,000 show, maybe 12 with some marketing. Everyone gets paid well. It's hard. You've got to look at capacity versus your ticket price versus your demographic and sort of very analytically work out how you're going to make your money back, where your break even is in the tickets, all of that sort of stuff, which I love. I love all of that finicky stuff.
Yeah, see, I was thinking of starting a room, and I should be talking, of course, to Lily. It seems funny, $1,000 a week. Because when you start a room, there's going to be that period where no one's really coming or not selling that many tickets and stuff.
To be fair, that would be for like you've got a pro headliner and a pro MC. If you wanted to do an open mic, a sign up, I didn't put any money into my all sorts. I did all of the marketing myself, and we had probably 30 comedians signing up each week.
Wow.
And that was all. Yeah, that was a big, because it was one of the last. There aren't any true sign up on the day rooms anymore. That was that. It was come in, put your name on a physical sheet. I'm not messing around with anything online. You write your name down. We go like that.
Yeah.
That's how it rolls, and it was really fun.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna.
Yeah, I think we should really.
We should talk. Waiting for some. I run a few rooms, never successfully. And I always seem to run these rooms where I'm penniless, and I'm kind of like, I'm the smell of an oily rag. But I was just thinking, I said to my wife, I said, look, if we got some money from somewhere, wouldn't it be nice to, start a proper room that's got a good budget. You deck it out a little bit, maybe you paint the place, like if it's upstairs or something, and you kind of put a good PA in, good, you get a stage built, purpose-built stage. Something to think about. Now, what have we got? Because it's Comedy Festival now. What have we got coming up, Lily, for you? What's in the pipeline for you? Yeah.
I'm taking it very easy this Comedy Festival. I'm doing tech, just lighting and sound, and I'm jumping on a few lineups, but nothing. I'm not going broke, and I'm not going insane this Comedy Festival, and I'm so happy about it.
Now talk about that for a little bit, because the viewers are going to be a little bit confused. Now, obviously, the Comedy Festival is kind of where all the big sharks, the big dogs, the little dogs, the little sharks, big sharks, they all kind of come together in April in Melbourne. And apparently Lars was saying it's probably the biggest comedy festival in the world now, because now that the Canadian one is no longer going. But what happens is that the little guys tend to just fork out money. The big guys tend to make it good. I remember years ago, I think it was don't quote me on this, but it was like a Dave O'Neill or those kind of guys who, they'd sell out at the town hall for 2 weeks at $38 a ticket, whatever. They'd walk away with 30 grand or 20, 30 grand, or if not, sometimes some of them even more, like a Jim Owen or whatever. For people Lily, like you and I, we've got to pay $500 for put a show on.
Yeah, for the registration and then advertising.
And then we might have 2 people in the audience.
Yep.
So is that disheartening for people, do you think, or is it actually character building? What means it?
A and B. I feel pretty strongly about this, but it's just my own opinion, and that's how I'm rolling. I think a lot with people coming into comedy at the moment. They'll do comedy for a year, and then they'll be like, I've got to put on a show. I'm doing my solo show. Just wait. I find that especially in this economy, the cost of living, all of that, unless you are mid to pro tier, doing a solo show is going to be a financial risk. And again, for me, it's all about weighing up registration, advertising, paying acts potentially. You've got to get liability insurance if you don't have it. Yeah. All of these things factor into where your break even is going to be. And that just keeps putting it up for me. So my advice to newer people in comedy is put on a comedy festival show for sure. Do it with 4 or 5 mates. do a lineup show together, split your time, you know, do 10 minutes each, great practice. Not as disheartening if multiple people don't show up, if it's an empty room, because you've got your crew with you. And you're probably not going to lose money. You might even make some money. Give that a shot. Do that for a couple of festivals, you know, jump on other people's lineups. I've been lucky enough to open last year for Jeremy Dooley for his opening weekend. Those sorts of experiences so valuable without the emotional and financial investment and potentially downfall in all of that. You know, I see so many people who are fantastic comedians doing full runs and their shows are empty and they're stressed and they're depressed, and it's just like, don't worry. You know, a hot tip for everyone I just saw is next year Jimmy Carr's coming to Australia. He's doing a big tour. If you look at his tour, he hasn't booked, he's got Ballarat and Geelong for Victoria. Weird, right? Which goes 17th of April, and then March, he doesn't go again until March. He's going to be hitting the festival next year, and he just can't book because, as you know, for festival registrations, you've got to do it all through them. So, Festival 2026, Jimmy Carr will be here. I'm calling it. Come back to this episode. Thank me later.
Well, we're at 39 minutes. We're going to wrap the show up. Lily, now, give us one, I know you've already done, give us one final sell for the ladies out there who are thinking, gee, you know, I kind of, you know, did you ever see Rita Rudner? Did you
Yes.
ever see, I mean, to me, Rita Rudner, I mean, she was an American, I think, or American-Canadian, I think American, but brilliant female comedian. Probably the benchmark for me. Give one plug out there for the ladies who might be watching about doing comedy. Just sell them the idea, you know,
There's only one you. I love men. I love men. I love men. But ladies, there is a space for you in comedy. We are a small group at the moment of very funny women, but there are so many spaces for you. You think you're weird? People want weird. I stopped doing things because I thought I was too weird for this sort of stuff. People want weird. They want funny. They want different. And as much as I love men, it's a lot of dudes doing comedy at the moment. Ladies, if you got a box, get on the Vox.
There you go. All right, so Lily, thank you for coming on the show. It's been great to have you.
Thank you so much.
What we want to do is we want to get you to come back, give us an update down the track.
I'd love
you
to.
know,
Yeah. You should get Maury and I on. You should have another chair.
Yeah, well, it's funny because someone today said, I want to come on with me, mate. And I said, well, the set's not big enough, you know, but I've had other people talk about that.
Look, I mean, Melbourne's skyline has never looked more beautiful, quite frankly.
Well, and we might be changing, if you're watching Ken, set maker, might be doing a new set for us, and so we look forward to that. But Lily, you've been a great person to come on the show, guest, and we'll see you next time on the Arwin Kraze Show.